Hello and welcome to Drunk on Tea. Today I'm taking a look at and comparing the Classic Citadel paints with the Coat d'Arms paint line, which are often considered to be the same paints just under a different brand. As well as the Coat d'Arms range, I also have the Warcolours Nostalgia 94 line, so I can compare and contrast these paints and see which ones are the closest to the original Citadel paints. First of all, I'm going to look at the price for these paints. The Citadel paints have been unavailable for a long time. You can pick some up on eBay with prices varying wildly, and also some are open pots. I personally would avoid a paint pot that could have been open for 30 years. I picked mine up at a local wargame show, so you can check out local sellers and you may be able to get a good deal. Coat d'Arms are easily available online at £3.20 per pot. You may need to find a conversion chart online to make sure that you're getting the correct colours, as some of the names are different than the Citadel names, but they are easily available and at a good price. Warcolours you can buy directly from their website and other retailers. For £32 you can get the set, which has all of the colours from the famous Citadel starter set, minus the plastic Chaos Warrior and Space Marine unfortunately. I'm using this set, but the paints are also available individually. Now it's time to get paint onto my palette and take a look at them. The Citadel paint comes nice and smoothly straight out the pot. Although the coverage is patchy, it does flow well off of my brush and applies in nice thin layers on the patch test. The Coat d'Arms paint is even thinner than the Citadel one, with a very watery consistency. It applies smoothly, but with an even thinner coverage than the Citadel Goblin Green. It's almost so thin that it leaves brush marks. The Warcolours paints come in dropper bottles, which is a big plus for some people. The paint is a bit thicker than the other paints, but it's still very smooth and flows easily. The paint will need thinning down more than the other paints, but it does flow very well and has a strong colour with good coverage. After applying the Goblin Green, I'm going to paint some of the other colours from all of the paint ranges, so we can see how they all compare against each other, both in quality and how the colours match. The Citadel paints are all very smooth, they don't need to be thinned much from the pot at all, and flow very well across the range. Coat d'Arms paints are thinner than the Classic Citadel paints, with poorer coverage. After all of these colours have dried, I will come through and add a second coat to half of the patch and see how these colours will build up in layers. But Coat d'Arms will need more coats than the Citadel and Warcolours alternatives. The Warcolours Nostalgia range gives the best coverage. They require a bit more thinning, but the pigment count must be higher than the other paints, as the colour is a lot stronger in just a single layer. After one layer, all the paints have very similar colours, but the Coat d'Arms are the thinnest, which gives them a slightly lighter appearance than the Warcolours and Citadel paints. Now I'll add a second layer to the patch test and see how the paints look with a second layer. The second layer has given the Citadel paints a pretty solid colour, even the yellow, which with the other two paint lines are still showing the paper underneath. The Warcolours have built up to a strong colour, although where the paint is thicker, it has left some brush marks as each paint needs to be thinned by a different amount to get the right consistency. Coat d'Arms are the thinnest, and even after two layers are still quite see-through, especially the red, and even the black isn't as solid as the other two brands. Now I'm going to compare the Goblin Greens in the way most people care about, on a base. I'm also going to try out Warboss Green from the current Citadel range, as when they converted to the new paints, they put out a chart saying that Warboss Green is a comparison to Goblin Green. So let's see how it matches up. The Goblin Green really is the base colour of the 90s, with a nice rich colour. Coat d'Arms is a slightly darker colour, but after 3 layers it does give a solid coverage, which is close to the original. Warcolours is also slightly different in colour, but not far off. In 2 layers it built up to a solid colour and does give off that retro-based look. Warboss Green, however, is a different shade completely. Although it paints on really well and gives great coverage, it does have a different look to the Goblin Green it's supposed to be a replacement for. If you enjoyed the video, please press like. If you want more videos, press the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. If you would like to support the channel and become a member, please press the join button down below. For the real test, I'm going to paint these Gretchin models using the D'arms and Warcolours paints. I've already painted up one using the Classic Citadel paints that you can see here. Cue the painting montage. Both paint ranges have really bright and vivid colours. They both come really close to the original colours from the 90s. D'arms are a lot thinner, taking several coats to build up to a solid colour. You have to be really careful when painting, as any mistakes will need to be covered over with white, as painting over with a different colour will still allow the other colour to show through. Warcolours have much better coverage. This is probably because they are a much newer paint recipe with a modern medium and a higher pigment density. Generally just 2 thin coats is all that's needed to give good coverage, although the brown was the thinnest paint and needed 3 or 4 layers to get a solid colour. Both of the Mythal Silver paints have awful coverage. It will take several layers of these metallics to get a solid coat with these colours, but I remember the original Mythal Silver also having bad coverage. When mixing and thinning the paints with excess water to create shades, the D'arms paints lose a lot of their strength. Although they mix with black to create a darker colour, the additional water makes it so that the very thin paint doesn't really show through very well. Warcolours mix really well, with the black creating nice colours and works really well as a shade, keeping the strength of the colour even though it's been thinned down so much. The black is very strong, so it's easy to over darken down the colours, so be careful if you're adding black to your paints. For the highlights, D'arms mix really well, with the white brightening up the colours without muting them too much. However, due to how thin the paints are, even without thinning down the paint, the mix is very watery, and with the poor coverage of the paint, the highlights are very subtle. It can take 2 or more coats to add a solid highlight. The Warcolours Nostalgia paint also mixes really well, with the whites not desaturating the colours too much. Because of how strong the pigments are to these paints, they give great coverage as a highlight and stand out really well against the base coat with just a single layer. Now let's look at all 3 Gretchin models side by side and see which paint line looks the most like the originals. Both D'arms and Warcolours look very similar to the Citadel paints. Warcolours are slightly darker and D'arms are slightly lighter. This could be because of how thin the paints are, allowing more of the white primer to show through underneath. Both paint lines give a good representation of the original colours. If you were looking at painting some retro models, either one would allow you to get results that give the feeling of a 90s paint scheme. Personally, I would go for the Warcolours range over the D'arms. They're easier to work with and have much better coverage, especially if you don't have experience with older paint ranges. Warcolours works a lot more like modern Citadel paints, but with the colours of the classics. But if you want a true retro experience, try the D'arms paints, or even see if you can find some of the original paints somewhere. Just make sure they're still sealed, as no one wants to open a pot to find a solid lump of paint. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this comparison. Please let me know in the comments down below if there's anything else you'd like to see me test or paint with these paints. Don't forget to like and subscribe, If you enjoyed this video, here is another one of me painting a Space Marine with the Warcolours paints when they first came out, and one that YouTube thinks you will enjoy. But thank you very much for watching the video, and happy painting!